Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm excited about today's episode because I have not done a motorcycle episode in years and years and years. And that's because, of course, Mason had the show and I wasn't doing it. But now I'm excited to do it, especially since I recently renewed my interest in motorcycles. And we have a motorcycle mega adventurer with us today, Kix Marshall. He jumped on a KLR 650 and rode to Ushuaia, the southern tip of Argentina. And we're going to talk about this epic trip all through South America. But he also has been traveling all over Canada, putting together stories and recipes and a cookbook, and it's called Cooked in Canada. And I'm really interested to see what his experiences are, especially with unique Canada cuisine. I mean, we don't talk about food a lot on the Adventure Sports Podcast, but hey, food is adventure too. So I'm really excited for today. Kix, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kurt. Thanks for having me on. How's it going over there on your side of the world?
It's very, very good. Are you in Canada now?
At this moment, I'm in Canada. Yeah, we do travel quite a bit, and we were away for a bit this winter. But at this moment, for the 3 months that Canada gets summer every year, I like to be around for them.
Oh, that's great. You know, I'll start with this because then you'll have a little context. When I was 17 years old, a buddy and I jumped in my 1968 Volkswagen Beetle, and we drove from Oklahoma. I'm kind of skipping some of the details.
To
Seattle, Vancouver Island, Quebec, down the eastern coast of the United States, back to Oklahoma. And so by the time it was all said and done, I did about 25,000 miles in that Volkswagen that summer.
That's a big road trip.
It was kind of a coming of age story for me at 17 to do that.
17, wow.
What that means now for me is that I kind of have a little bit of a feel for what it would be like to tour Canada, but we kind of did a straight shot right through. So I'm really excited to hear more details about that. But before we go to Canada, I really want to go to South America.
Yeah, me too. It's a great place. Let's revisit. It's amazing.
Okay. Well, Kix, tell us the story. What caused you to say, I'm jumping on this 650 KLR, right? And I'm going to Ushuaia.
Yeah, a couple things. I'll just sort of go back a little bit and give why I got the idea and then tell how it happened. But originally I was living in Thailand at one point when I was like 28 years old or something like that. And then after that, our business plans there didn't quite go to plan. And then we moved to New Zealand. And I was there for about 8 months or so. And on the plane ride back from that trip, there was a documentary series on, which I'm sure you've heard of and everyone has. But anyways, The Long Way Round, where Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman arguably drive around the world in a very short amount of time. But anyways, they do it. But before that point, it never occurred to me that the world was connected by road. It never even crossed my mind. I'd only been like mostly places by plane other than North America. And I was like, oh, I guess the road doesn't just stop at one place. It goes on. And so I'm like, you can actually drive around the world. So I went into that hard. I watched that whole series on the 16-hour plane ride home. And then I spent a couple of years this is before you could just Google everything just to put a timeline on it. And I'd ask questions and I looked around and tried to find people who'd done it. I found like 2 other people who had driven, I think they got sponsored by Toyota and they'd driven SUVs around the world on definitely a different budget. But Toyota gave them the trucks and they did it. And so I emailed them a bunch of times, asked them lots of questions, how they did it. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. I want to drive around the world. Like it must be able to happen. So I spent lots of time researching it. And then my only example was these 2 guys who'd done it on motorbikes, who were movie stars and had a big budget. So I put together basically an identical plan. I found a friend, I put together a budget. I figured it would cost about $200,000, tried to get a camera crew together. I pitched it as a show to National Geographic and Oasis and the Travel Channel and all kinds of stuff. That didn't go anywhere. There was no one.
Say, Kix, you think big.
Yeah, so I thought that's how you did it. I thought that's how people did it. I only had one example of how this worked out other than the car sponsorship or the movie stars. Anyways, that all fell through. I didn't get a TV deal. I didn't come up with $200,000. Nothing. I didn't get one sponsor. Nothing happened. And so I still decided that I wanted to pull it off and I wanted to make it happen. So I spent quite a bit of time just like over the years trying to pull it off. And then jump ahead a few years and I was just about my early 30s or so. And I had a few businesses on the go. And that was all kind of going well, but with business, you get distracted from travel. And then one day, all of that just blew up in my face, and I lost everything. Lost all the businesses, lost all the money, hit rock bottom, or so it seemed at the time. It was pretty bad. That was rough. That was a rough patch. Just like basically got wiped out. I had to start over. But in that little glimmering moment of unhappiness, I also thought, like, I'm actually have nothing to hold me back right now. There's nothing. I don't have employees. Right. I don't owe anyone any of my time. I don't have anything standing in my way. So I said, I'm going to go for this. So I bought a KLR 650 because it was less than $4,000 and included a free helmet. So I was like, this is great. And then I just learned how to
free helmets, Kix.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know. Luckily, it was a good one. I didn't know the Arai brand helmet. I never heard of it because I didn't know anything about bikes either. And so it came with this free Arai helmet, which the guy was selling me as an extra $1,000 bonus. And I'm like, well, the bike's worth $4,000. How can the helmet be worth $1,000? Anyways, he was telling the truth. And I took his used bike and I bought 3 other KLRs that same year. And I took all the different parts off them and built a sort of super bike, which just meant I had luggage and a nicer windscreen and a nicer seat, basically. And then sold the other ones and set off down the road to Ushuaia the next year with $4,000 bike, a free helmet, and a $20 tent, and not really much of a plan. And not $200,000, I mind you. Like, the budget went from $200,000, and by the time I set off, I figured it would take about 18 months to get from Canada all the way through the Americas down to Ushuaia in southern Argentina. And when I did the math, it worked out to be about $12 a day Canadian, which is like $9 US at the time. So that was it. That was my new budget. I went from rock star to budget star, basically, and I set off.
That's because you're not Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, right. No, there was.
It helps, right?
Yeah.
Did you, just as an aside, did you see the episode where they actually went into it was in Northern Africa, but it was one of the sets for Star Wars, and he was touring around the set, and no one recognized him?
Yeah, I did see that episode, actually. Yeah, that's funny.
I thought that was funny. Yeah. That one cracked me up. And then here's another current event, more current. Adam Riemann has been putting out episodes about going across Australia on a KLR 650.
Oh, great.
That's his latest launch. And 𝗂𝗏𝘁 has loaned him a motorcycle so that he can do this, of course.
Yeah.
But he's kind of making a lot of cracks about it. It's way more capable than you thought it might be, but it's still just a 650 and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How did you find your KLR? How did it go for you?
The good thing is that I didn't know much about bikes. So I only started riding motorcycles about 3 or 4 years before that. I'm not a seasoned, I didn't grow up on motorcycles. I got on my bike for the first time at, I think, 32. I think was the first time I ever stepped on a motorcycle. And so my buddy had 3 of them. And one of them was like, I think an 80s Yamaha cruiser bike or something like that. Anyway, he took me outside of town, found us a straight road, and said, it's 1 down and 4 up. See how fast you can go. And that was my training lesson. And so after that, I was hooked. And I don't know if it's the same where you are, but where I'm in Alberta, which is also different than the rest of the country, you don't need a license to ride a bike as long as you're with someone who has a license. It's the craziest rule. But
oh, really?
It's so crazy. But anyway, so I rode around with him for the summer, and then I'm like, this is my thing. And I bought a bike, and him and I went down to the States, and then we came back, and then I went down to Mexico that winter because I'm just like, I got to do this. So we drove through Mexico, which was amazing. And it's my first bike road trip. And I came back, I'm like, I'm out of here. I got to figure out how to do this trip. So anyways, the KLR, he recommended it to me. He's like, people drive these bikes around the world, and I didn't know anything. So I was like, okay, that's his suggestion. I'll take it. And it's like the worst bike on the planet. It can go anywhere. It's like a Toyota Tundra. It can do whatever you want. It'll never give up. It is heavy. It is clunky. It is gutless, but it will go forever and it will go anywhere you want it to. It's unbelievable.
Which sounds like a really good choice for South America to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. People can, it's a carbureted bike. It's old. We have the DRZ 400, whatever. It's kind of the same idea. It's just a carbureted bike. You could look at where all the parts go. Took it into a mechanic shop. They grab a hammer. They grab some welding stick. They smash on this and weld that. And people built parts out of other parts and just kept running. It's amazing. It's actually an amazing bike, but it's just a simple bike.
Okay, well, let's see if we can invite some non-motorcycle enthusiasts into the conversation a little bit. Why would you recommend that someone try a motorcycle out if they've not ridden before?
Oh my God. I don't know about you, but my trigger word is freedom. And
Oh
so,
yeah.
so I've backpacked quite a bit before that in my late teens, early 20s. I backpacked a ton. And then I'd driven 1 year in my early 20s from Canada to Guatemala in like a camper van, which was also amazing. But once I got on a bike and realized that there's no wall, like there's nothing around you, you're just in it. You're in the weather, you're in the people, you're in the environment, you're basically in it. Then the freedom of that and the places you can go on two wheels is unbelievable. You can go anywhere. I have a tent on the back and a camping stove, and so as long as I have water and food, I'm good. I'm good to go anywhere. I can go wherever I want. I can go through every country in South America and tour off the back road, and it's great. So if freedom's your thing, the motorbike I think is where it's at, and it's such a great way to meet people. It's like the niche of niche markets. Someone sees you on a bike, and they're like, "Oh, what's that bike? Where's it from?" And in South America or Central America, the KLR 650 is a big bike. They're on 125s and maybe 250s. And so it looks like a big bike, and there's no barrier. So if you're on a camper van or a truck and the window's up and someone knocks on the window, you're gonna be freaked out in Guatemala or
Sure.
Nicaragua. But if someone walks up to you on the street and you're on a bike in Nicaragua and they just want to know like what you're up to, you're friends instantly. It's such a different reaction. You're not scared, you're friends. It's such a different way to meet people. It's unbelievable.
I love that part that you just mentioned about meeting people, being more accessible and immersed.
Yeah.
And I've also interviewed people that have ridden bicycles around the world, and they report it to be the same, maybe even a little bit more because there's no motorcycle noise.
Yeah, right.
But it's a heck of a lot more work.
It's not on my list. No,
Yeah, it would be
not.
so fun. But the beauty of the motorcycle is that once you build up your skill a little bit, I would say anybody can do it. You don't have to be a super athlete to motorcycle around the world. You just have to be fit enough to hold your own. And whereas if you're going to try to bike around the world, you better be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, good tolerance, good pain tolerance, I would think too, and because
Oh yeah.
if you got a sore back or a sore leg or a sore foot, you can't just stop. You got to get to your destination or your safe spot for the night or whatever it's going to be. But the bike is not terribly hard to learn. You just have to ride, obviously, like fairly defensive. But other than that, it's not super hard to learn. And then once you figure it out, you're free to go. So if people like to travel, which is my gig, then I can't think of a better way to possibly do it.
You know what, Kix? You already know that I have a DRZ 400, and I got that a few years ago. I had been without a motorcycle for decades, and when I finally got my KLR 400, this is the reason. You see the picture behind me?
Yeah, what is that? Where's that at?
That's where I live.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
Gunnison, Colorado. And
Wow,
that picture
wow.
to me, the reason it's there is not just because it's pretty. I took that picture because to me it's the invitation to adventure. I see
for
that
sure.
road headed off into the mountains and through the sagebrush prairies, and it calls to me. You know? And that's what I spend my spare time doing is just trying to explore the 3,000 miles of back roads in Gunnison County,
Yeah,
Colorado.
unbelievable.
It's crazy. But all of that said, one of the things I noticed that I didn't really anticipate was as soon as I got on the motorcycle, people on other motorcycles wave.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
It's like we're a team. We're a family.
Yeah.
We're doing something that not everybody does,
Yeah.
But not only that, I noticed that people walking along the streets, on the sidewalks, maybe they're out of business, you go by, they look. Whereas if you go by in a car, they don't notice. But on the motorcycle, they're like, oh, there's a motorcycle.
Yeah, it's
Especially
like-
the little kids.
Oh, yeah,
The little
right.
kids are like, mommy, mommy. And I'm like, I'm actually kind of a part of something here that's bigger than I knew.
Yeah.
And that's kind of in alignment with what you were talking about. When
Yeah.
you're on the motorcycle, you're just that much more accessible, and people are curious.
People are connected, I find. Like in North America, people don't necessarily grow up on bikes, but outside of North America,
Yeah,
that's people's transportation is a motorcycle for everything. So almost everyone in Central and South America and parts of Africa too grew up on a bike. They had bikes their whole lives. Their parents had a
Right.
bike. They never had a car. They never had a truck. They grew up on bikes. And so there's also like a connection of people are somewhat interested in your bike because it's so foreign, and they have a connection because they understand that lifestyle.
Man, well, I have to say that the road has called to me as well. I would love to get on a motorcycle, and probably not a DRZ 400, but get on a motorcycle and go to Ushuaia. I think that would be so great.
It's amazing.
But the DRZ 400 is so capable as a trail bike that's street legal is the way I describe it, because it's
Yeah.
not as capable on the street, whereas the KLR can handle itself on the street pretty well. And so I think maybe it takes something like that for the bigger adventure. But
Yeah.
let's dive into
Yeah.
some of the adventure stories, Kix.
Sure, I got lots. Let's do it.
Okay, well, I don't want to burn up all our time on just one thing because we have so much to try to get to.
Yeah.
But what was it like? First of all, tell us day one of heading south, what it felt like to get on that motorcycle and go, I'm going, I'm off. I don't have $200,000, but I'm off.
The day one was cold. I remember because it was late. It was just like 2 days before Halloween, and in northern Canada, well, I'm not super north, but central Canada where I live, I was volunteering for some stuff, and I had to finish that before I left. And so the goal was to get out before the snow fell, because if I didn't, then I'd be stuck in the country. Basically, I wouldn't be able to get out. So, anyways, it luckily didn't snow early. Usually snows like sort of mid-October where I live, and it was late October. And so I was wearing my jacket and my rain suit and all the clothes I had on. My bike was overloaded because I didn't understand packing at the time. And anyways, the day I left there was a little media, and then some news was there, and they took my picture and wrote a little story. So that was kind of fun. And I left at a local dealership from a family friend. My grandpa's buddy owns this dealership. He's 98 now and still rides a motorcycle to work 3 days a week. He goes to work and rides a motorcycle. He's 98 years old. It's crazy. His name's Glenn Turple. It's amazing. Anyways, I left from his place. So it's kind of nice too. He's a biker guy, and he was quite into it too. And then headed south. So I was nervous and overloaded and cold the first couple days. And then once I got basically south of Montana, then I wasn't worried about the weather anymore. I started to relax a bit, and everything's good. And I've been to Mexico a few times, so when I crossed to the border there, it wasn't anything too crazy. I didn't feel like, because I'd done it before. But once I got sort of south and into Belize, Central America, that was all sort of new territory for me after Guatemala. So everything was new, and I was a little more. No one ever brags about the great stuff. They always tell you about all the worst things are going to happen. And so I was a little edgy at first, but after a few weeks of meeting people, the sort of the walls come down, and you realize that most everyone everywhere is a good person who wants to help you out. So the walls dropped, and it was great after that.
You know what? I've heard over and over and over again from adventurers, the people they encounter along the way, 90% of people are really good-hearted people. They just want the best for everybody. There's another 5 to 8% that, I mean, if you let your guard down, they may take advantage of you, but decent people anyway. They're not horrible people, but, it's 3% that kind of cause all the ruckus. But think about what that means. That means that 97% of the people that you interact with are basically going to be good-hearted people with similar goals and dreams that you have.
Yep.
And that's just the way it is around the world. I've heard that over and over and over again, and it's been my experience too. Does that align with what you experienced?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see people who have usually only seen North America on TV. So they've seen the movie shows or like the At Your Housewives or something. It looks like everyone's loaded.
Oh, yeah.
And so they just assume that when they see a North American, they're like, and they have a big bike. They don't understand it's one of the cheapest dirt bikes you can get your hands on. But anyways, they're like, oh, you have this big bike, and people think you're quite wealthy. And so that was a bit of a barricade to get through. And once they realize I'm like living in a tent 5 days a week, and I obviously have probably more pocket money than they do, but I'm definitely not rolling around in any sort of luxury accommodation. I'd say that one of the best eye openers for me is I stayed with this family in northern Peru, sort of near the Amazon rainforest border with Brazil. Totally by fluke. I just was riding around one day trying to find a place to camp. I wanted to camp on this lake. I couldn't find a place to camp. Someone said, go to these people's house. It's like they do little boat tours and stuff where they row you around the lake. And I showed up on the doorstep, asked if I could camp. They said, you're welcome to camp here, but it's going to rain tonight. We have an old shed in the back if you want to put your tent in there. So they cleared out this old rats and birds and stuff everywhere. And we put my tent in there. And I spent a month there. They cleaned it up and they put me a bed and a table. And after about the second week, the man whose husband, his name's Ruben, had the place. And he asked me what I was doing every day because I always leave and go somewhere. And I'm like, oh, I ride into town and use the internet because they don't have internet here. And I write articles for these motorcycle magazines to try and make money. He's like, try and make money for what? I'm like, well, I got to pay for this stuff. He's like, you have a job? I'm like, yeah, I have a job. He's like, I just thought all North Americans were millionaires because every time I see them, they're not working. They're just having fun and they're only spending money. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, it's hard to understand, but I'm like, I'm doing this trip on like $9 a day, which might seem like a lot for you, but I'm like, that's an incredibly small amount of money. And so once he realized that, I'm like,
barely gas money, man.
Yeah, barely. That's barely gas money. That's why it took me 2.5 years. So once he realized that we weren't all millionaires and I realized that everyone was basically nice along the way, it was a good eye opener for both of us to like just see how nice the people are on the ground. And he's like, wow, I just thought they were all just like, I'm like, no, we're all the same. It's just my currency is a bit stronger than yours, but we're all the same.
Yeah. You know, I have found a lot of the commonalities are that people just, they want to have enough, but enough doesn't mean it a lot necessarily. They just don't want to be impoverished and hurting.
Yeah, right.
They want to have love and family and friends. And I feel like those are priorities universally with the human race.
Yeah.
And I'll add one to that. They want opportunity. And I think we all do. And so opportunity is the thing that gives us the dream, right? But and opportunity does change quite a bit as you go from system to system around the world, country to country, economic, political settings. I mean, everything changes.
Yeah.
The opportunity is the biggest diversity probably. But it just seems like most people, they just want a chance to live a happy life.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's kind of the human way. So when you were down there, I saw somewhere that you really got into a coffee thing.
Yeah. Actually,
what's the coffee story? People love coffee.
That's come full circle now, actually. So I was driving through El Salvador, and I was looking for this waterfall to camp at. I'd read about it, and I was trying to find this road to find this little area to camp by a waterfall. Sounded kind of nice. This area called Miraflores, I believe, was the zone. And I was driving along, and like many days before that, I'd missed the stop and missed the turn, and I got lost, which happened hundreds of times. Ended up in this little town. The town was a pretty small little town, maybe just a few streets. And I kept driving around, and I was like, "Oh, this isn't where I want to be." But it's getting dark, and so I'd looked on my this little traveling app I had, and there was a place that recommended a little hostel in town. There was only a couple of them, and so I was trying to find it, but I couldn't find it because my GPS wasn't working. So I drove past, and by that time, people started to recognize me because I'd gone by 3 or 4 times, and I was like, "I don't want to be recognized either because it's getting dark, and I don't know where I'm going." And people are generally good, but after dark, the game changes a little bit, and so. Finally, this guy in a little tuk-tuk started following me, and I'm like, damn. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I want to be followed. And I made a wrong turn up an alley, and it ended up being a one-way, and he came up with me, and I was kind of freaking out a bit, because I'm like, this guy's been following me, and I got blocked in this alley, and I turned around, and he's like, stop, and my Spanish was like, I could get stuff, but my Spanish wasn't great at this point, and he's like, what are you looking for? And so I said, this is the place I'm trying to find. Anyways, he's like, yeah, I know where that is. You drove by it like 4 times. So he took me on his tuk-tuk and showed me where I was going. He took me right there and then just left. He didn't charge me anything. He just wanted to help me out, and he hit the road. And I walked inside, and I'm like, I need a room for the night, got a dorm bed and this sort of part hostel, part little mini hotel. And I met a guy there named Javier, and he asked me what I was up to. And I said, I'm just driving south, man. And he's like, well, do you want to learn about coffee? And I'm like, well, I've sold coffee before. Like, I've sold it by the cup, and I worked at a coffee shop, and I had a little cafeteria. But I don't know a lot about coffee, and I don't drink coffee either. I'm like, it's not my jam. I think it's kind of gross. And he's like, you think coffee's gross? And this is like the epicenter of coffee in Central America. And so he's like, I'll teach you about coffee if you volunteer your time to work with us. I'll teach you. So I spent a month with this guy. Worked on an organic coffee farm. A month. I spent a month there. It was unbelievable. It was supposed to be a day. Then it was 2. Then it was 3. Then it was 3 weeks. And he taught me everything about from where they grow the bean and how they plant the fruits to enhance the flavor, like the mangoes or mint or whatever it's going to be, and how it grows in the volcanic soil on the side of the mountainside. We did tours there, did the harvest. At one point, I was hand picking beans out of the batch for like a premium grade coffee, and sorting the bean, drying the bean, and I did everything. I learned everything about organic coffee or specialty coffee from start to finish. It was unbelievable. It was the most hands-on coffee class in my life. After that moment, I was hooked. I was hooked on the coffee.
Do you like coffee now?
Yeah, but I'm a little specific about the kind of coffee. I can't just drink a Nescafe, but if it's got to be some like a specialty or like a pretty high quality coffee. And my little saying at the time, because I was working there, I was like, if I don't know the farmer who grew it, the guy who picked it, and the person that roasted it, I'm not drinking it. Obviously, that's out the door now. But while I was in this town, I could pull that off for a month because I knew these people, and so that was great. And since then, it's come a bit full circle. And I contacted them a couple of months ago. And I'm trying to start a coffee company with them now to bring their coffee from El Salvador into North America and sell it here. It's a bit of a slow process, but it all just sort of like, it just worked out like magic. And this guy Javier was just like unbelievable. Such a nice guy. But I just met him and he was happy to teach me what he knew. And I was happy to tell him about what I was up to. And it all worked out pretty good in the end.
You know what? There are two themes that I picked up on there. One is you just told two stories in a row where you're going to spend a night and you stayed for an extended period of time.
Yeah, it's almost the same scenario, yeah.
You know, and I what I'm realizing is that that's the beauty of travel when you have the true freedom. You're not on a schedule. You don't have to catch the flight home. You know, you haven't prepaid for everything in advance. You have the flexibility to just take advantage of situations when they come up. If it's interesting, if you're learning something, if it's a good setup, you could just be there. How important was that for your journeys through Central and South America?
Total game changer. Totally.
Really?
Well, I'd say one, like, I know people drink coffee everywhere, but I'd say just the coffee aspect sort of like changed my whole outlook on coffee, which is also a bit of a universal connector. You can meet almost anyone anywhere and say, you want to go for a coffee? Yeah. And that's how you become friends, which wasn't my angle before. So that was good in general, but I'd say just the knowing that people genuinely want to show you some of their culture, whatever that is, whether it's like maybe it's hunting, maybe it's motorcycling, maybe it's coffee, whatever their thing is in their area, which is really important to them, which is the backbone of that economy in that area and their way of life. They just want to show you what happens there and how it happens. And then once you sort of get to see that firsthand, you can't buy that. It's impossible. You can't go on any tour. You can't sign up on anything. It's not the same as if someone just invites you into their world and then shows you firsthand how things go. It's like if I showed up at your place by accident because I had a flat tire in your driveway, and you're like, oh, spend the night. I'll take you out to the back roads tomorrow. I couldn't have, if I'd bought that experience 2 months in advance, you would have had the road laid out. You would have wished for the perfect weather. You would have made sure the sandwiches were just right. But and if any of that went wrong, it would have been a loss. But if I'd showed up and the same thing had happened and it all gone right, it would have been nothing but a win. So it was amazing. Yeah, it was pretty good.
I love that. Well, the second theme that I picked up on was that because you learned all this stuff about coffee without planning in advance, you found something interesting and an opportunity. Now you're saying, hey, I'm going to start a business with this. Why not? So the point is this. When we expand our horizons and experience new things, it opens up new opportunities.
100%.
And it's just, you don't expect that. I mean, you didn't start a trip. Oh, I'm going to go down to Central America and learn about coffee so I can start a coffee business. You know, instead, it kind of presented itself to you.
Yeah, it shows up on your doorstep and says, hey, we're over here.
Okay. Darien Gap.
Yeah, what did you do? Darien Gap. That's a good one. That's funny because that was the rest I wasn't horrendously worried about, but that was the one thing where I had no plan. I read what you could do, but I didn't know what you're supposed to do. And the more I asked, why I asked the questions. Okay, yeah, right. People know what we're talking. Good point. Yeah, if you hadn't heard the Darien Gap, which I hadn't until this trip, it's the only part of basically Alaska to Argentina that's not connected by road. Everything else is connected by road except for that one. It's about 90 kilometers long, so it's at like 60 miles or something like that. And it's between Panama and Colombia, and it's all jungle. So there's trails through there and treks. And it's known as a popular smuggling route for people and narcotics and that kind of thing to get them out of South America and then up towards North America is the plan. And so nobody wants to pave that road. Either government on both sides don't want to put a road in there. They don't want to make the access easy, but there's a way to get through. And so there's actually a movie about a group of American I don't know if they're war vets. I don't want to get that wrong, but anyway, there's a documentary about them. They did it about 8 years ago or so. So they drove from Alaska there, and their goal was to go through the Darien Gap, and they had KLRs, oddly enough, and they went through.
There you go.
And 3 of the 4 bikes made it. One guy gave up, and they couldn't get his bike through. This bike's still in the jungle. But anyways, by default, you can't really go through there. It's possible, but it's just not a thing you're supposed to do with your life.
That might be your entire adventure
Yeah.
if you try that.
People have done it. It's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible. But so anyway, the other options are you can fly your bike from Panama into like Bogota in Colombia, or you can put it on, or it used to be, I don't know if it exists still, it used to be like a huge sort of a ship that used to go through, like someone's private yacht kind of thing. Not a nice yacht though, just like an old sailing ship, a German guy. And you could put like 20 or 30 bikes. He had a little boom arm, and they put them up on there, and they'd ride through the Sandblast Islands. How do you get through there? And the third option, which was the cheapest option, is one I took, is you can put it in a sea can and go through. It gets shipped through the Panama Canal, and it goes through to Colombia, and it shows up in Cartagena, Colombia. It takes about 10 days, which is super bizarre because the whole trip is like 1 or 2 days on a boat. Anyway, it takes about 2 days. So it was me and 2 SUVs that were traveling around the world in a shipping container, sea can. Shows up in Cartagena, and then you argue with the border agencies for 5 days to get it back, and it costs you more than it should. But anyways, the trip goes on eventually. So that's how you get around the Darien Gap.
Wow. It's kind of interesting that there's a place in the Americas that you can't get through. I mean, you can walk through or push a bike through, like you said. It can be done, but there's still a place where there's not actually established access, might be the way to say it.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? That's pretty crazy. Okay. Mudslide. I've been hearing, I did a little bit of research online about your trip, and it says, that you had to battle mudslides. And I thought, well, that's got to be a story.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna wrap 2 stories in there. One's they're both little accomplishments I get. There's a lot of mudslides. The roads aren't built in different countries in South America like they are here. So there's lots of roads are just maybe a dirt track or a gravel road, sometimes paved too, that'll fall around a mountainside. But there's lots of like through the Andes and stuff like that. There's tons of mountainsides, and there's floods. There's the rainy season. It probably floods once or twice or 10 times a year, and it'll wash out the roads. So there's one time we were going through, I was with a buddy of mine, and we were in Colombia at the time also. And we were doing a track around this one mountain, and we came through, and that road had washed out. It became a mudslide. And I'm like, well, I don't know if we had enough gas to go back the way we came, because it was quite a significant ways. But I'm like, I do know we have enough gas to go ahead, but there's no road. And so it had washed into sort of like a little narrow path in there. Actually, I have a pretty good picture of it. And we were passing through, and we'd walked it first, but with our luggage on, it was too wide to get through. So we took our luggage off and took everything we could off our bikes, and then sort of walked this path through the mud. And then I would hold on to him, like on the back, and kind of stabilize him. And he'd put his feet on the side of the mud walls and drive his way through the other side. And then I took the bags off my bike and took everything on my bike. We walked him through to the other side and then pushed our way through there. And that was one of hundreds of examples where I was like, if you just have enough time and you think about it, you can basically achieve whatever your next little goal is. It might take you way longer than you wanted to, but if something shows up like a problem like that, then you can eventually make it through somehow. So I was lucky I had someone with me too. It would have been probably a little trickier on my own for that stage, but I just happened to meet this guy. We were riding together that particular day, and we came across a washed out road, and we made it through. So it was good. And if I can tell like one more little story.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay, so this was there's a place in Ecuador. Yeah, it's in Ecuador. And so it's the highest point from sun to earth. And so if you measure, say, what's the mountains in Nepal? K2, and what's a famous one everyone climbs up?
Everest.
Yeah, sorry, Everest. I don't know how I forgot Everest. So that's the highest one measured from sea level. That's how they measure it. And this one isn't as high as that, but they measure it from the center of the earth, which is technically the measuring point. And it's the highest mountain in the world. It's in Ecuador. And so I knew you could get there, but I didn't know if you get there on a bike, because once you get up, it gets really snowy and kind of closed in. But I want to find out for myself. And I also heard that if you get in at the right time and no one's there, you might be able to get your bike up to like the peak of this mountain, even though it's snowy, depends on the time of year. So it's called 𝗔𝗯ście, I think is how you pronounce it properly. So I headed there. I wanted to see if I could do it. But in the Andes Mountains, I don't know if you've ever had altitude sickness before. It's brutal. Altitude sickness is like the worst. You're up like 15.
It's bad.
It's bad. It's up like 15,000 feet in the air. Anyways, I got through there on the way up to it's a national park. And so on the way in there, I got to the peak and it was really snowy and really clouded. And I came around a corner and there was two buses who had gone to, one was going up over this way, one going this way. And they'd actually crashed at the top of the mountain.
Oh, no.
So I pulled up and you can only see them when you're within about maybe 40 or 50 feet because it was so foggy. So as I pulled in there and I saw where the accident was and it seemed like they kind of had it under control. No one was major injured or anything. So I went around it. I got to the park just before sunset and I knew it was going to be late and I wouldn't have time to maybe go up. I wanted to go up in the morning. So I asked the guy if I could camp there, but it's cold. It's below freezing. You're 15,000 feet in the air. He's like, sure, you can camp in the sort of entranceway to where the bathrooms are because there's like a little coffee area there. Very simple. You can put your tent there if you want. No one's going to be here. They don't have the washrooms too and you'll be out of the wind, but you can't camp in the washroom. You have to camp outside. I'm like, okay, whatever, fine. So anyways, I'm there, I'm walking around and there's a little sign at the bottom that says no motorcycles past this point because it's snowy and kind of icy, whatever. But I knew there was no other way I could get up there because you can take a little 4x4 tour or something. They're done for the day. So I'm like, well, I have about an hour before it gets dark. And I'm like, I think I can make it on my bike. Like I've been through a lot of stuff. And so I'm to the front and I asked the guard at the front, he's just him and I left there. And I'm like, is it just you and I here right now? He's like, yeah, just you and me. Because I knew he wouldn't be allowed to let me up there either. I said, so if it's only us two and you're in here and I'm out there, would I be able to go to the top of the mountain if I make it back before sunset? And he was like, he's kind of more like this. And he kind of pointed, like he's like covered his eyes and pointed. And I'm like, that's a yes. And so I went back and got my stuff. And slowly started like trekking my way up to the top of the highest point from center earth. And slowly I got up and there's like alpacas as you get a bit higher and the snow starts to come in and it's cloudy and foggy. And I was worried I wouldn't be able to see the peak because it's all kind of snowed in and it's really high up. So the air is really like breathing like this as you come to the top and the bike's choking along because it's not designed to be sucking thin air either.
That was my next question. You're carbureted, man.
Yeah, no, it was just like, it was rough. It was like not loving it, but there's a very narrow window of opportunity. So I got to the top and I got up there and I parked my bike and just like that, all of a sudden, it was so bizarre. It was the clouds just sort of split and opened up the very peak and this little bit of sun came down and I'm like, oh my God. So I ran back to get my camera, which was a bad idea because I was like, because you're not supposed to run. Turned around, I took a picture of me with the bike and the cloud in this very narrow window of opportunity. And that was over in a minute maybe, and it all closed up, and that was it. And it was getting dark, and I'm like, I did it. I made it. I was one of the few people who actually drove up here, and it whipped around, and then slowly trekked back down because it's snowy and a bit icy, and came back to the bottom. And then camped there for the night, and that was the first time I ever had altitude sickness. That was brutal. I was up all night, and I had this little gas heater for cooking. I would turn it in there to heat up the tent a bit because I was so cold, and then I would fall back asleep for like 20 minutes and wake up and my head's pounding. It was worth it, but it was brutal. I had the picture to say I did it. I wrote a book about it, and then there's a chapter in there called Motorcycling to the Highest Point from Center Earth. And I was proud I did it, and I'm happy I got the little check mark of things done, but I wouldn't recommend it, and I wouldn't probably do it again. But I can happily say I'm one of the few people who's ridden their motorcycle to the highest point on Center Earth.
There you go. That's pretty cool. So the pictures behind you there, are those yours?
Yes, actually, my wife took those, who I wasn't married to at the time, but she did come down and meet me quite a few times on the trip. So let's see if I can get this right. That's a KLR right there. There you go. That's in Peru. That's me in Peru on the KLR. And then this is where's that? There we go. That's in Peru also. It's a little, nice little shot there. I think most of these are in Peru, oddly enough. This is that's some salt flats. I believe that's in Bolivia at the Solar Unami. It's like the largest salt flat in the world. And this here is, how do I do this? There we go. This little green one here. Man, this is hard going back. There it is right there. So
there you go.
So I rode a bike. We rode to Machu Picchu also. I took the bike into Machu Picchu, which is amazing to go by motorcycle. And that's the road in. It's unbelievable. You have to go in the back way because you can't go in the same way the train goes, and you have to hike in from the way. But it's amazing. So those are
by the way, public service announcement. Most of you are probably listening via the podcast. We're showing pictures because we're also on YouTube now. And a lot of people may not realize that, but the Adventure Sports Podcast is on YouTube. And we have video there whenever we can record video, which is not every show. But if you want to see what we're talking about, you might have to jump over to YouTube. So back to the motorcycle and the carburetor. I mean, fuel injection adjusts, for the altitude as you go, if it's working, right?
Yeah.
But the carburetor can't do that. So how big of a deal was that in the Andes? Did it cause you major heartburn, or were you able to kind of chug through?
Yeah, so you can chug through. I'm not a super moto techie guy, so I didn't know much about it. So I personally would just adjust the fuel flow, which I don't know if that's the way to do it. So someone's probably going to chime in and be like, no, you adjust something else. I'm not sure. But I could do it, but you would notice definitely in the Andes for sure, because when you're rolling from 5,000 feet up to 15,000 feet at different points, then it's the body. I can feel my body. And then once I realize like, oh, it's hurting here, I can also feel in the bike. I can feel the bike like literally choking along is what it feels like. It feels like the bike is choking. So I never had any, say, breakdowns related to altitude and the bike, even though it was carbureted, but it was definitely noticeably more difficult than it would have been at, say, sea level or whatnot. But the KLR, like, you could dump diesel fuel in the engine and turn it over and it would just sputter and butter and choke and roll along, and it's fine.
It's an amazing machine. I mean, if you want something that's just going to go, and you hear this term in motorcycle circles, people would just say it's bulletproof.
Yeah, it's bulletproof for sure.
That means extended maintenance cycles. It can put up with a lot of abuse, and it just keeps going. It may not be the higher performing motorcycle because they usually aren't bulletproof. They're fragile. But if you want something that can just tractor on, then you need something like that.
Yeah, I don't work for Kawasaki, and they don't give me anything. I don't have sponsorship at all. But if I was going to plug a bike for bulletproof use, I would definitely take the KLR. And I named on the trip, I ended up naming my bike Claire, Klair.
There you go.
After the KLR. And so instead of KLR, I just put a couple letters in and called it Claire. And then throughout that journey, we became very close to each other. And I spent 2.5 years, just me and the bike. I got really attached to the bike. And when it was all over with, I wrote a book about it. And I titled it Claire. I named it after the book because I basically dedicated that book to that bike because it was the backbone of my survival and the only person I could talk to other than a little plastic monkey I had in the handlebars for like 2.5 years. And so when it was over with, I got down to Argentina and I had to sell the bike. And I've had a lot of breakups previous to that. And this is going to sound bad to say, I'm probably going to have an ex-girlfriend call, but it was like the worst. It was like the worst emotional turmoil for letting something go I think I'd had through before that. I cried for 3 days when I sold that bike at the end. I just like sat in a hotel room and just like bawled because we'd done everything together. Everything you'd done with like you do with a human, I did with a motorcycle. So it was awful. It was like the worst. It was the worst way to finish things up.
Well, I had a bike as a kid that I rode for probably about 5 years.
Yeah.
And I remember the day I sold it.
Yeah.
I outgrew it. I got to the point that I wasn't really riding it anymore. So we had a little distance between us for a while before the final breakup. But I'm with you. There's something about you're depending on a machine, but the machine takes on a personality almost, and you learn the quirks and what it can and can't do. It takes care of you. You're taking care of it. I mean, we anthropomorphize this kind of stuff, perhaps, but I totally get it. I kind of chuckle because when I go out to the garage and walk by my DRZ, I almost always reach over and pat it on the seat and say, "How you doing today?"
Yeah. So your friend. It's crazy. It's such a crazy thing.
Right. It's not only that. It's when it gets you out of some really hard times. So you build those memories, and it's like this motorcycle is part of the memory of all of this.
Yeah.
So I know that people might laugh and say, "You're just being silly. It's just a motorcycle." I'm like, no, get on one. You'll know what we're talking about.
Yeah, spend some serious time in the saddle, and you'll see what the connection's about. But they're just like you become so dependent on it to get you to and from anywhere, even if you're just 50 miles from home and you're stuck in the mud. If that thing gets you out of the mud and gets you home, you're pretty happy you didn't have to walk home. And it's just one little moment. Times that by 10,000 of those, and it's pretty good.
Give us the name of the book again. You mentioned it.
Yep. So the book I wrote about that trip, I titled it Claire after the book, Klair. It's probably easier. So I sell it on Amazon and I sell it on my website too. But if someone goes into Amazon and just punches in my name, Kix Marshall, it'll come up because there's like a makeup line with the same title, so it gets a bit confusing. But yeah, it got released as a bestseller when it came out, which was nice. A lot of people read it, got some good reviews, so that worked well. And it's I don't know, it's like $20 or something online. So it was good. It was hard. I've never written a book before. I wasn't a writer, so don't think you're getting into some compelling. It's well written, but I wasn't previously a writer. But yeah, sold lots of them, and
But we're getting the stories.
Yeah, you got to capture all the stories for sure, and you're going to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly of which there. It's not a how-to book. It's all the things that went wrong, the things that went right, and kind of how it wrapped up in the end. So you get a little bit of everything.
Well, good on you, Kix. I'm glad not only that you did the trip, but that you documented it so that other people can armchair travel a little bit or learn about what they may be up against if they want to do something like that. Let's get back to Canada. You're working on another book now, a cookbook.
Yep.
And so this is a totally different project, but I'm very, very curious about it. Give us the bullet points, the summary of what you're up to.
Sure, yeah, I can summarize that one pretty quickly, actually, or pretty easily. So I traveled lots. I'd probably traveled to maybe 50 countries in total, quite extensively, usually not less than a month, maybe 2 weeks would be the minimum. So I've seen a fairly decent chunk of the world. After I'd done this, I'd always met people who'd ask me about Canada and what about Canada, all places in Canada. And I didn't really have an answer for them because I hadn't traveled Canada much. I knew my own backyard fairly well, but they'd always be like, what about Quebec, the French part of Canada? Or what about the East Coast where they have like the colorful homes and the great accents and the wonderful seafood? And I'm like, I don't know.
Newfoundland, Nova Scotia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And so we were in Africa for 6 months, my wife and I on our honeymoon. We were rolling around, and I read this book by a guy who's African. He traveled through Africa and wrote. He'd never done it before. He wrote about the different places he'd been, and sort of some recipes. And I'm like, that's what I'm doing when we get back. I'm like, I'm going to ride across Canada. I'm going to meet people. I'm going to document the foods that are sort of less discovered. And my wife was like, she's behind whatever I do, but she's like, you just can't do one thing without starting another project, can you? So anyways, we came back, and then I was going to do it on a bike. It's going to take a 250cc this time. I wanted to take it on a dirt bike just to make it that much more difficult. And I wanted to be able to go wherever I wanted to. And my goal was to go from one coast of Canada on the Pacific to the other coast of Canada on the Atlantic, and then go as far north as I could and drive every drivable province and territory, or for you guys it'd be like states, that I could travel and meet people.
They're huge.
Yeah, they're massive. Yeah, they're
huge.
Canada's huge. Like people, I don't know if it's tough to understand, but like Canada's such a big place. It's gigantic, and things aren't close together. Like it could be 4 hours between one city and the next kind of thing. Like it's a vast chunk of land. And so, yeah, I didn't really have a plan. I just knew that as soon as the snow started to melt, I was going to leave, and I had to be back before it froze again. So it gave me about 7 months to travel everywhere, which sounds like a lot, but it was tight. And so I just sort of I'm like, where are the most interesting things in Canada? So for a couple of examples is I headed up to northern British Columbia, which is just below Alaska on the map, just right below Alaska. And I headed up there, and I went to an indigenous community in an area called the Nass Valley. And I met, a lot of it happened, it all happened by fluke. I didn't know these people. No one was really helping me out. I just sort of asked around, and people just kept showing up. And I went to this community, and I met a guy there named Lonnie. He invited me in, showed me around. And he's like, you want to learn about the local foods, right? I'm like, yeah, I want to learn about the local foods. He's like, okay, great. He's like, when's the last time you had sea lion? And I'm like, I'm sorry, what, Lonnie? What are you asking me?
Is that a thing?
Yeah, is that a thing? He's like, yeah, you've never had sea lion? I'm like, I know what sea lions are, but I didn't know people ate them. He's like, yeah. So he took me down to the community, and in their community, they have 4 smokehouses, these cedar houses about 10 by 10 feet, maybe 10 feet high. And someone will go out, they'll hunt the sea lion, they'll bring it back in, they'll clean them up. They will hang the meat in the smokehouses, and they'll smoke them with alder wood for, I think it's 2 or 3 days. I wrote about it. I can't remember the exact date. And then they'll take the flipper, for example, and they'll pickle that, like pickles in a jar, and make it like a snack, like eating pickles, basically. And so he showed me how they smoked the stuff in the community, took me back to his house. They were having smoked sea lion ribs that night. Show up at Lonnie's place, took me inside. He had smoked the ribs, I'd boiled the ribs. He made this barbecue sauce for him. And I sat in the kitchen with his family. And we ate smoked sea lion ribs for the first time in my life. I didn't know it was a thing. You can't buy it, you can't sell it, so you have to know someone in the community who can legally harvest it because they're indigenous, they're allowed to. and then show me around. So that was amazing. And then I'd say another.
Here, I thought you were just going to talk about poutine.
Yeah, poutine. I actually didn't talk about poutine. I did a small thing on poutine, but I knew everyone was going to be like, "Whoa, we have this interesting poutine culture." I'm interested. I'm glad you said poutine too. That's funny. That's the way we say it. They say it poutine, but I say it poutine also.
Poutine.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I did a little thing. I did a bunch of stuff on maple syrup too, but I did a little thing on poutine. But then I did a couple of more regional dishes in Quebec. And I'd say there's lots of really good stories, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through the cookbook, and we started doing a YouTube series on it called Cooked Motorcycle Adventure. And so I'm thinking about episode 16 of about 30 now. So same thing, you can go to YouTube, you can punch in my name, Kix Marshall, and it'll come up. And so one of the great ones, if you're like adventure, motorcycles, and food, which are all my trigger words, I was up in northern Canada in a place called Northwest Territories. I met a guy there. I was introduced to a guy and met him before this. And he had a teepee back in the woods, Indigenous experience also. And you can only get there by Argo. Do you know what Argo is? Those like 8-wheeled overlanding things that go on water and mud.
I do not know them well, but I'm getting the picture.
Yeah. So they can float or go on land. That's the only way we can get there. So I had my little 250 bike, and I was trying to meet him up in the woods, and then I got lost in the forest in northern Canada, and I couldn't find the guy, and I got stuck in the muskeg. And eventually I had a drone with me, so I launched my drone and flew it around until I found his camp in the woods, and then flew the drone to his camp, and then he realized I was lost. He came and found me on his Argo, took me back to his camp, and then we spent the day in this teepee he has in the woods, and we cooked muskrat, and we cooked caribou ribs, and we cooked ptarmigan, and I ate muskrat tail for the first time, which if you've never had muskrat tail before, is a very interesting experience. It's like gristly and whatever, and spent the day up there, and then biked out.
Sure about that one.
It was a hard one. It was mentally, the taste wasn't so bad, it was just mentally a bit challenging to like.
You're right.
Nibble your way across. Yeah. So that was like episode 6 of the YouTube series is that one. But anyway, I did across there.
What's your YouTube channel again?
Just my name. So Kix Marshall, Kix Marshall. If people can go in there and look that up and they'll.
So you have a YouTube channel going along with the cookbook. Now, is the cookbook released yet?
No, it'll be done before Christmas. I don't know the exact. I thought it'd be done last year, but it was a little bit more difficult to produce like a 30-chapter book and 30 episodes on YouTube than I thought it was going to be. I don't know why I do this every time, but it's taking longer than I thought. But it's come together. It's coming. I chip away all the time, and it's coming together for sure. I have this great YouTube editor.
What's the name of the cookbook? It's Cooked in Canada?
It's going to be Cooked in Canada, yeah. So it's, I have a blog too. Same thing. It's just my name. If you go to the internet and punch in Kix Marshall, it'll come up. And I've written all the stories that are on YouTube right now are also written. So if people prefer to read the stories, which is I'm a little more creative in the writing side. I have an editor named Jonathan, great guy who does the YouTube stuff. He's creative there, and he'll edit all the video I took. But I recorded all the stuff. I interviewed all the people. I met everyone, and then I wrote the stories out. So it was a crazy amount of work. But when it's done,
Kix, I hate to say it because I wanted to hear way more stories about your adventures on the 250 in Canada. Maybe we'll have to do this again, and we can get into more of that. I'm sure we could fill up another episode.
Yeah, if someone wants to talk little bikes and big adventures, I'm happy to fill in any blanks for you, sir.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Well, we've kind of burned up our time, but I want to say thank you so much. You do a great job of sharing kind of the whys and the hearts of what it means to go down and interact with people and seeing humanity as a whole and having those experiences. Man, it calls to me, and I appreciate your sharing it with us. So thanks for being on the Adventure Sports Podcast today.
Thanks a lot, Kurt. I really appreciate it. I like sharing stories, and I'm glad we're kind of on the same wavelength with adventure. And thanks a lot for having me on the show.
You bet. So Kix Marshall, Kix Marshall, and that's the way to find his books on Amazon. You can go to his website, his blog, his YouTube channel. Thanks, Kix.
Thanks a lot, Kurt. I'll talk to you soon. I appreciate your time, and thanks for having me on the show.
You bet. And for everyone out there, until the next time, get out there, have some fun.